Pakistan has secured its ultimate insurance policy and it bears the Saudi royal seal. The Mutual Defence Pact between Riyadh and Islamabad declaring that any attack on one constitutes an attack on both represents far more than diplomatic paperwork. For Pakistan, this agreement is not about deterrence but rather about indulgence, providing a contractual guarantee that Saudi Arabia will shield its regional provocations. The timing reveals the pact's true purpose, though. Following Israel's unprecedented 2025 strike on Qatar and the humiliating 2022's Houthi drone attacks on Saudi Aramco facilities, Riyadh needed a dependable military partner. Pakistan seized this opportunity to formalize decades of cooperation into a protective alliance. This partnership has deep historical roots. Pakistani troops first deployed to Saudi Arabia in the 1960s to defend Islamic holy sites, and following Iran's 1979's revolution, Saudi fears of Tehran's expansionism deepened their military dependence on Pakistan. More crucially, Saudi Arabia quietly financed Pakistan's nuclear program during the sanctions era, as documented in General Feroz Hassan Khan's book, Eating Grass. For India, the formalized alliance creates unprecedented challenges. Any future retaliation against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism will now be reframed as aggression against a Saudi treaty ally. New Delhi finds itself fighting not just on the battlefield but in diplomatic courtroom over this, forced to present evidence justifying every defensive action while Pakistan operates under political cover. All right, let's take the chat forward with an expert joining us. Former Indian diplomat, Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev is joining us. Sir, thank you so much for joining us for the chat on News9. I want to understand from you, sir, from your calculations, what do you make of this dodgy insurance policy between Islamabad and, of course, Riyadh?
Thank you for having me. It's my first time on your channel, so I'm delighted to be present. You're referring to my article in the Hindu today, perhaps, where I have used the word dodging insurance. I should begin by saying that this is probably the fifth such agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, beginning in 1951. And the previous agreements have been even more ambitious, if I can say so. As you yourself mentioned, and my article also mentions, the golden era was in early 1980s, when about 20,000 Pakistani troops were deployed in various parts of Saudi Arabia, making piles of money and throwing their weight around. I should say that situation has evolved since, and today, for past 20 years or 30 years, 25 years, I should say, Saudis have had no foreign troops. They have been able to face up to Al-Qaeda insurgency in their own country, had wars with Yemen, had also had second Iraqi war by Americans against Saddam Hussein, and have suffered various other challenges, but they have managed to overcome them. So I feel that in the current situation, the old analogy of boots on the ground in large number are not required. And in any case, I think Pakistanis cannot be expected to fight either Israel or Iran or even Yemen, because their parliament has had a resolution, if you recall, about 10 years ago, when the question of Yemen war and Pakistani participation came in for, and Pakistani parliament said that only time that Saudi Arabia would be defended is when the holy shrines are attacked. So that goes back some days, but this is where I say that the things are a bit dodgy. Clarity is missing in the agreement that has been signed, It has not been publicly stated as to what will happen. It vague in terms of joint defense, aggression against one is equal to aggression against other, etc. And in the absence of such clarity, the situation remains dodgy. I should also add that in the past, Pakistan's presence in Saudi Arabia and defense involvement has not had a wholesome impact on bilateral relations. Yes, money was made by Pakistani top brass. Yes, some equipment got transferred, etc. But overall, image of Pakistan in Saudi Arabia remains extremely low, and one has difficulty in presuming that this would all change. As I have tried to argue, uh, there have been some debate about whether it shows that Saudis are moving away from United States. I have tried to find circumstantial evidence to suggest that Field Marshal Munir's meeting uh, with President Donald Trump was actually facilitated by Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, to discuss role that Pakistan can play in securing the Gulf. And that's how the things started moving.
Sajdev, if I could also ask you, because India and Saudi Arabia do have a wide-ranging strategic partnership between them, and it has deepened in the last couple of years as well. So how exactly, like we are calling it a dodgy pact between Pakistan and Saudi is going to affect the Indians who are already residing there in Saudi Arabia, and of course the Saudi Arabia and India's relationship for future?
I am pretty confident that Saudi Arabia's extensive ties with India would continue, despite the agreement being signed. As I said, the rationale of the agreement is to secure or buy an insurance policy not for Pakistan, but for Saudi Arabia. Uh, uh, and there, I believe that Saudi interests clearly lie with India in a, even in military field. Uh, let's count things. Indians outnumber Pakistanis in Saudi Arabia 3 to 2, 3 million to 2 million. Indians are the largest diaspora in that country and are well regarded. India's trade with Saudi Arabia is 13 times Pakistan's trade with Saudi Arabia. Investments likewise. And I should also add that India is the third largest importer of crude in the world. And before Russian crude supplies started in last 2 years, Saudi Arabia was the largest source of crude to India. And we were therefore the second largest trading partner of Saudi Arabia. And here too, one should add that India is the only major economy of the world where oil consumption and imports are still rising. Even in China, the imports are stagnant. So, India is something that Saudi Arabia's uh, the largest crude supplier in the world, uh, salivates about. And therefore, any step that smacks of Saudi Pakistan joining together against India would be counterproductive, at least in the economic and trade domain for Saudi Arabia. And that makes me hopeful. Even in the domain of past four defense agreements over 75 years since 1951 onwards, I think the impact on India security from such agreements has been minimal. Uh, there is no definitive record whether Pakistan received any military aid from Saudi Arabia during 1965 or 1971 wars or Kargil crisis or otherwise. So one would have to uh, take that analogy and uh, do a bit of predictive math for future, and that's what my analysis is based on.
Ambassador, if I could also ask you, because India has kept its counter-terrorism policies very, very clear, not only to its citizen but in front of the entire world, right? I want to understand from you this joint treaty that has been signed between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and attack on one is going to be considered an attack on both. How exactly are we going to retaliate? How exactly are we going to pen down our strategy going forward in our counter-terrorism, operations against Pakistan if they again tickle us at the borders?
That's an important question. The word used in the, uh, well, at least the joint communique released after the signing of the agreement in Riyadh 3 days ago, is aggression and not attack. Uh, I suppose that puts a different spin on it. Secondly, I would like you to recall that Prime Minister was paying an official visit to Saudi Arabia when Pahalgam attack happened, and Prime Minister cut short his visit. The joint statement issued during that abbreviated visit, both sides condemned Pahalgam incident, and that shows uh, where Saudi fulcrum lies. I'm not predicting forever that this would happen, continue to happen, but the SMDA, the the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, would is a sort of putative device in case worst case scenario pans out. Iran becomes very hostile to Saudi Arabia, or there is an attack by Israel or Yemen, etc. That kind of worst case scenario, the agreement is going to be, of course,
Right,
valid
right.
and would be evolved. But if, as it appears, Gaza is fighting is nearing its climax and end, Iran is in serious dialogue, and unless it agrees to the terms of E3 countries, by end of this month,
Right.
snapback sanctions would be imposed
Okay.
on it to great detriment. So I believe the situation that could precipitate uh, such an eventuality where Saudi security is threatened and SMDA gets invoked are going to be few and far in between, and
Right.
therefore the importance of this
Okay.
agreement would become hypothetical. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Ambassador. Thank you so much for joining the chat here on News 9.